if you're a real estate investor that's really not sure about how many marketing channels to implement into your business to generate leads, or, I have too few, maybe I'm only working with one right now, and you're not really sure how to balance it when it comes to setting budgets for yourself, setting actual expectations, and what it looks like to actually have return on your investment for your marketing, then today's episode is really going to help you kind of dissect that and dig deep into setting all those boundaries for your marketing. So I'm a good friend, Brian Snider. He's out of Indianapolis, Indiana, currently works with the Collective Genius real estate mastermind, obviously for real estate investors. But for the longest time, he ran a massive wholesaling organization out of Indianapolis and still gets to help with marketing. He runs his own business as well, but talks to many hundreds of entrepreneurs in the real estate investing space about their marketing on a consistent basis, on a yearly basis. And today we're going to be going through some of how you should be budgeting yourself for your marketing channels. He uses a specific analogy about the three-legged stool, right? So you have a stool. Imagine you have an actual stool that you're going to sit on. If it has one leg equals one marketing channel, then it's probably not going to be stable. You're going to have a really hard time seeing any kind of results. If that marketing channel fails, and you're not going to really know how to recover and start opening another channel, and then leads aren't going to be coming through. If you have two channels, maybe a little bit more stable, but you still can't sit on it. But once you add a third leg, now it's a lot more stable, and you have the ability to be a little bit more flexible in your marketing, and you have multiple basically streams of marketing. We talk about streams of income, streams of marketing in your business, and it becomes a little bit more sustainable when it comes to leads being generated for you. Additionally, he talks about how to determine when should I cut off a certain marketing channel because it's not working well, what to expect when it comes to return on investment. I think a lot of people try to have a 10x return on investment and all that sort of thing, but sometimes that's too much. Sometimes if it gets that high, maybe you should pour more dollars into that marketing channel. Or if it's double your money, so it's a 2x return, it's still returning, right? Why shut it off? But maybe we need to make some tweaks to get it up to 4 or 5x. So there's certain things that we have to think about in our marketing as we do them. And we dig into that very deep. And it's a very, very insightful episode. You guys are going to get a lot of value out of it, and a lot of direction, frankly, and a lot of expectations as well. So guys, listen up and pay attention. Brian's a wealth of knowledge, a very analytical person too, talks about numbers a lot. So if you like numbers, then this is going to be a good episode for you as well. I personally don't like numbers that much, but still very insightful. So here, without further ado, is my good friend, Brian Snider. Hope you guys enjoy. Welcome back to the REI Marketing Weekly. It's your host, Josh Culler. And today I have my very good friend, longtime friend, Brian Snider on the podcast, hailing from Indianapolis, Indiana, just south, not that far from me, but Hoosiers. Well, you're from... Yeah, exactly. But I'm super excited to have you, dude. One of the most down-to-earth people that you'll ever meet. And I get to see Brian pretty frequently at the Collective Genius Mastermind, which he helps run the Select group, which we could probably talk about later on in the show once we're wrapping up. But Brian, I'm excited to have you on, man. With some of the things that we're going to be discussing, typically, before we were talking before the recording. Typically, I bring on people and we talk about one or two tangible, actual strategies that you can work on. But I think some of the stuff that might be missing from the show that we want to fill in today are going to be more operational type mentality when it comes to running your marketing. So you gave the example of, the three-legged stool and that sort of thing, which I actually just frequently heard. I really hadn't heard it before until the last 6 months or so. And I think it's just the idea of it is creating stability in your marketing. Yeah. Right. So let's talk about that just from a mindset standpoint and running your marketing. I think people either they do one thing and they're afraid to do other things, or they do too many things and then they don't know what works and that sort of thing. So hand it to us. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. So, I'm kind of in a good position where I get to talk to, I talk to kind of 500 investors or hear from 500 investors on a regular basis and stuff. So I kind of hear a lot of different angles. And one of the things, I literally was just talking to somebody about this earlier today, one of our members, he was like, I kind of have all my eggs in one basket right now of we're doing cold calling and I'm making MLS offers, but that's not consistent yet. So really it's just cold calling. That's my only source of marketing. And I'm like, well, what I always like to say is the first thing I want to get to, whether this isn't just real estate. This is just business in general, if you're marketing and stuff like that. So but specifically for real estate, like you want to try to get to a three-legged stool. And what I mean by that is basically if you think about if you have a stool or something you're trying to stand on that has one leg, it's not very stable. If it has two legs, it's still not stable. But if there's three legs to it, it's a little bit stable. You can stand on it, you can jump on it, you can do a little bit of everything with it. So marketing is the same way. Marketing, if anything else, is up and down, inconsistent, like kind of going back and, hey, unless you work with color media and your social media is like just on point, like you're going to have some ups and downs and stuff with what's going on and things like that. So the whole premise behind a three-legged stool is that we have basically three legs that your marketing is standing on. So I like to say one of those should be inbound, one of those should be outbound, and then one of them should be kind of like time-based, like niche-based of like something that you can like kind of dig into a little bit of passion about, whether it's you or somebody on your team or something like that, something that you guys are kind of like fired up about that you're like kind of just digging into and toying around with, playing around with and stuff like that. So, and more doing that.
Yes, as you're saying, like maybe it's something that you learn at a mastermind you're wanting to implement.
Yeah, it might be like, hey, we're gonna do, or even let's say it's even social media. Like, yeah, we're gonna try this ad, we're gonna run this, we're gonna kind of play around with it a little bit and stuff like that. So, which is a little bit, it is inbound, but hey, it's not gonna be the same thing all the time. You're gonna toy around with it, play around with it and stuff.
Brian, I don't want you to lose track of the direction you're going, but just for the people that are listening, define what inbound, outbound, the difference between those two would be.
Yeah, so inbound would be where leads are coming in to you, where you're literally getting a form that's sent to you, you're getting a phone call that's coming to you. So if I'm doing PPC ads on Facebook or social media, I'm doing PPL ads on Google, things like that. Have direct mails I consider direct mail inbound because even though I'm going out to them, I'm still collecting those phone calls back and forth and stuff like that. So where a phone call or a form is coming into you, that's considered inbound. If I am cold calling, if I am texting, if I am doing, RV, leaving voicemails, things like that, email, that's considered outbound. And then, there's also kind of the referral basis too. Like I consider that like kind of a leg that you could do of where it's more relationship based and, having conversations, going to meetups or RIAs and things like that. So, inbound is anything that's coming into you, outbound, anything that's going out. And then basically you reach out to those people and stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure. So when it comes to like the balance between, I think the point is to have balance. And, we talk about in business having multiple streams of income and that sort of thing. When it comes to marketing, it sounds like we need to make sure that we're doing the same kind of concept. So it's more of a balance purpose. But how do you, at this point, it's like, well, then can we make a justification for a fourth leg on the stool or a fifth one? And now it's more stable. But then how many legs can you actually add to a stool before it starts to be too much?
I think as many as, so it's kind of just going in, like adding more and more is what you really want to get to. The more you add, the more stable it's going to get if you're tracking things the right way. So I ran a real estate investing company in Indianapolis where we're doing 300 deals a year. My goal running that business was to have a 6-legged table is what I called it. So if you think about a 6-legged stable, so a 3-legged stool is pretty stable. Like if you're a beginner and you're starting your business, you're ramping up, like your first step to get to is a 3-legged stool. Once you have a stable business and you have things operating and you're doing deals consistently, you have kind of like monthly revenue coming in, I want to try to get to a 6-legged table. My premise behind that is if you think about a 6-legged table, you can literally jump on and stand on and do whatever you want. Even if you removed one of the legs, it's still stable. You can still stand on it. You can still do whatever you want on it. But that one leg, I can play around with it at any given time. So for me, what that was I'd have 6 marketing channels going full blast at all times. But whatever my lowest performing one was, I could play around with it. So let's say I had TV, direct mail, cold calling, texting, radio going, but then my PPC was down at the moment. I would play around with PPC. I'd maybe try a different provider, try different ads, try different wording, see what happened, play around a little bit, or even remove it and maybe go to PPL or try something else. So it's one of those things of like, I know the other 5 legs are going to keep my business stable because that table was stable. So that 6th leg, I could play around and mess around with whatever I needed to. Then eventually we got up to, 8 marketing channels, 10 marketing channels. Then for us, it was really like, okay, now we're just measuring I'm always throughout this, I'm measuring the ROAS, the return on ad spend. I'm always looking at that, or the return on investment if you want to use that term as well. I'm measuring that and trying to figure out, now it's just a math game to me, which Josh, you knows about me. I'm a former math teacher. So once I turn anything to a math problem, I'm game. Like I'm all about it and stuff. So then it really turns into of like, it's kind of that, the debate was always like, we always want to try to have that, Grant Cardone put it out there, like the 10X, you want to 10X something. Well, that turned into like everyone wants a 10X return on anything they're doing. Well, the reality is if you're getting a 10X return on your marketing, that's like, I think that's kind of stupid. Like it sounds good, but like I would rather like throw more money into it. Like once you get over like a 4X, 5X, like put more money into it and see, just then it just becomes a math problem of like, all right, if I put this amount of money in, I know I'm going to get this amount of money out. So then it's just like figuring out what you're used to spending, what you want to get back on it. So I really like my kind of my ROAS and my return on ad spend. I really like it around like in between a 3 and 4X. Yeah. Right around there is kind of my sweet spot. And I think a lot of other investors will agree with me on that of like, if it gets above that, that means you need to put more money into it or kind of refine it a little bit. If it gets below that, that means probably needs to change it or change the process or something like that. But if it's in that kind of that sweet spot, that's a good kind of where you want to be with marketing, and you're just kind of putting more money into it, making sure you get the same amount of money out of it.
Yeah, of course. I agree with that. I mean, one of the questions I was going to ask you, and then you answered it, was what could be like for you a good expectation of the return? Because you brought up the ROAS. I think there's kind of like and you see this a lot too because of the amount of investors that you talk to, but I feel like there's a little bit of a kind of like a poisonous mentality when it comes to return on ad spend and your return on the marketing that you're actually putting out. Because like you said, everybody wants that 10X. Everybody wants to see those drastic numbers. However, realistically, if we think about it, even if you're just doubling your money, I know that's not sexy, but like, even if you're doubling your money, is it really like, if you put $1,000 Facebook ad out and you get that back $2,000, then it ultimately
still making money, right? Yeah.
Right. And so I think the thing that Brian's really hammering home is it's the manipulation of like tweaking the system. So if it's returning double your money and you want to ramp that up to like 3 or 4X on your return on ad spend, then toy with it a little bit and mess with it and try to get it up to that point. But then if it gets too drastic, then it's like, well, we need to spend more money on it because it's actually working well. And a following question that I would have on the other side of that is, now at what point do we decide, well, this leg on the stool is not working, or this marketing channel is not working well? How quick should we cut that off and say like, all right, we're not spending any more money on it. Let's focus on, instead of the 8 channels we have, let's focus on the 7. And then if the 7th one doesn't work, we focus on 6. Like, how quickly are we making those maneuvers in the marketing channels?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things of like, if it's something new, if you're starting it out, I was always under like, hey, I want to make sure that I have at least 6 months. I have 6 months worth of spend that I can burn on this. Let's say it just completely blows up. Yeah, I can at least afford to spend 6 months on this without it affecting my business or my business falling down. I like to give everything at least 6 months. Usually like that 3-month mark, I'm kind of like, all right, if I would like to see at least my return on the ad spend back within 3 months. And then at 6 months, I'm really looking at like, okay, I should be at like a 3X number. I think that's kind of pushed a little bit on, maybe if I were to kind of look at it now, I'm probably a little bit more, I've always said that 3 and 6 months. Now I'm probably more of like 4 and 8 months maybe. Cause I think it just takes a little bit more time. Market's a little different. It's shifting things. It takes a little bit more time. So usually I would say my general rule of thumb, if I were to, say it right now, it'd be like, if I put money into it, I should be able to get my return back within 4 months and then get it like a 3X return within 8 months is what I'm probably really pushing for and stuff. So, but it's that point of like, so that's for new stuff. For stuff I've been working and stuff falls off of like, hey, when do I know to cut things? For me, it's that if it falls below that 2X, or if there's something else I want to try or something like that, it's that extra leg of the stool or extra leg of the table, whatever it is, of like, I'm always going to be playing around with that no matter what.
Yeah.
So maybe there's certain things of like, there's things I've played around with all the time of like PPC. I always realized like there's only so much money I realized I could spend on PPC. I'd always like, hey, at $10,000, then I would get this back. But once I went to 15, like I still got the same amount of leads. I think it's, so it's always kind of playing around too of like knowing what that amount of, what's your maximum amount of things. There was only so much direct mail I could actually send out a certain amount of intervals. So kind of playing around all that. So there's all this stuff reverts back to some type of a math problem, whether it's like, hey, building out your legs to figure out how many legs you need and to be able to operate efficiently. Then it's what the ROAS is and stuff like that. But then it's also figuring out like, okay, how much can I push it? What's my minimum maximum within this to like get that return that I need to and stuff like that as well. So, but all of it comes down to being able to track the data and being able to kind of know what your numbers are and where you sit to be able to do what you need to within your business.
Yeah, for sure. I want to kind of jump into that a little bit. So when it comes to numbers, this is going to be where Brian's licking his chops and he's doing this like, just from a number standpoint, and you're talking to somebody here that really doesn't like numbers that much. It just like, it's not natural for most business owners, entrepreneurs to, be honest about numbers and the way that things are shaping up. What type of numbers do you generally look at from a marketing and sales perspective to determine like this is actually, because it's easy to say like, well, this channel I spent $10,000 on and it got me 20. Well, how are we figuring out that return? Like what numbers are you looking at to make that determination?
Yeah. So I'm really like, I think it's one of those things of starting off in general. I'm going to like my top metrics. I mean, if I'm a real estate investor and I want to like, hey, I'm not tracking anything. I need to figure out what I want to track. I'm going to track, basically like how many leads am I getting? How many of them are qualified? How many appointments am I going on? How many offers am I making? How many contracts am I getting? And then on the dispo side, how many contracts am I accepting? How many properties am I selling? Those are like kind of my top 7 that I'm going to track in general.
Sure.
Once I have that dialed in, now it's going to go back to like those leads and stuff. Now I'm going to kind of dial a little bit more on my marketing. All I'm really wanting to know is like, hey, what all am I doing my marketing? And then how much am I spending? How much am I making? So that comes down to on my properties I'm selling, whether I'm wholesaling, whether I'm flipping, whether I'm building a rental portfolio. I'm still going to track in how much money am I making off that. I want to know kind of what that return is on that stuff. So I want to be able to attribute it to what marketing sources are coming from. So as long as I know that, then I'm just looking at like, hey, what am I spending? What am I making on it? And then that's really kind of the formula. All right. If I'm spending $10,000 in direct mail a month, but I did, 2 deals and I made $20,000 a piece. All right. So I spent $10,000. I made $40,000. What I do is I subtract that $10,000 from it. And my return is $30,000 on that $10,000 investment. So that's how I'm looking at it.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And I think one thing I want to go back to there was something that you said there that made me think about this because it was in the previous conversation we had. You were talking about like when you're starting a new marketing channel. I like the time frame and I like the fact that you said there's got to be an adjustment. And the number one thing that I think about, when we generally would say like it's 3 to 6 months, but now we're going to extend that time period to like 4 to 8 months or even 12 months sometimes, depending on what our investment is into the marketing channel. The reason why I like that is because nowadays we know, especially the last 5 years or so, there's so much more competition out there. So where, when I first got started working with like Gary Harper and David Richter and those guys, and we were doing direct mail, there was very few people that was in our market that were actually doing that. Very few bandit signs out there. Like there was maybe like 1 or 2 local guys. And now I think just in CG alone, there's probably like 6 people from Northwest Indiana, right? And that's just one group. So that's the truth in it. So we have to be willing to make adjustments on real scenarios and not play the pity party of like, oh, it's not working. Why is it not working? But then also not cutting. That's why I asked about like cutting the leg off too early or too late. I think that, there's some kind of breaking point. I like the 4-month time period because I truly do think that that's a good time period. But I would say within those first 30 to 60 days, that's when you're really starting to just structure that marketing out and tweak everything along the way to make it get to that sweet spot. Because if you judge it too early, if you judge it 45 days in, you haven't made enough tweaks, right?
Yeah. And it depends on the marketing channel too, of like, if you're doing direct mail, like anybody you talk to is going to tell you that all direct mail usually takes like 7 mailers to get a deal.
Yeah.
Well, that means that could be 7 months or maybe longer for something, so it's kind of even figuring out too. Maybe you need to extend your period and stuff too. But I think one of the things that you mentioned with the competition, when I always like to look at like marketing when it comes to competition, like I want to know what everybody else is doing before I start something else, or let me know how I do it differently. So even if I'm laying out, even if I'm putting out bandit signs, what I'm going to do is I'm going to drive around and look at all the bandit signs that are out there, and my bandit sign is going to be different. What can I do that's different than what everybody else is doing? If I'm doing direct mail, when I used to go on walkthroughs as acquisitions, I would collect all the direct mail that people sent to my sellers.
Yeah.
Like if I went on a walkthrough, I'd want to know, you got some other people are looking to buy your house. Like, I'd love to see kind of, do you have any direct mail? Do you want me to throw that away for you and get rid of that? Well, I want to collect. I want to know what they're doing.
Yeah.
I want to see what those are, because I want to make a piece that's different yet like fits my business as well.
Absolutely.
So what do we offer? What is our differentiator that nobody else is selling? Well, for so long over the last, 5-6 years, it's all been about like get a cash offer, like things like that. Of like now that's not the language that's working now. Like that's old school. That seems, people think you're going to come by in like a duffel bag full of cash, and it seems a little slimy and things. Now it's going to be about, we went to secure cash offer. And now we even get rid of the word cash. Now it's like more of like, hey, secure offer for your future, or, so you got to change up the language of what you're using and what is everybody else doing? What's your differentiator? How are you different? Like, what can you do that's not like anybody else? And how do you stand out? How are you better than everybody else in your competition, which is right up your alley when it comes to marketing and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So in a roundabout way, what Brian was just explaining is one of my favorite marketing tactics and what we call like funnel hacks, and that's a competition audit. So I love doing competition audits because I can look at what other people are doing that are doing what I do, and me working as a service provider directly with clients. Like if I'm, Brian, most of my clientele, like all of my clientele, is in the real estate investing space, and they do a little bit of different things, each one of them. But I have a couple of clients that I directly work with that are wholesale coaches, right? They teach people how to wholesale properties. So theoretically, they have the same audience, but maybe they do things slightly different. So I'm going to take them and then go audit the rest of their competition and see what's going on. What are they doing? Yeah. And it's no different from an implementation standpoint if you are directly, marketing to motivated seller leads. It's you audit your competition, figure out what they're doing, slightly do it different. Don't just do it different just to be different, though. Do it different to stand out in the right way that you want to stand out, right?
Yeah. Or sometimes it's like doing things differently to stand out in things. Or sometimes it was like, oh, we do the same thing. I'm going to put the same message out, but I know I do it way better than that person.
Yeah.
So I'm going to use the same message, but my product's better, so I can do it that way.
Yeah, for sure. My kid's cuter on the postcard than their kid, right? Yeah. That stuff happens, but yeah, for sure. One of the last things I really want to ask you as we wrap up here, we're at the 20-minute mark. Great podcast so far. I love all of this. And I think this is like conversations that every real estate investor that's listening really needs to digest and take very seriously. You're part of Collective Genius, and I'm in the Collective Genius as well. Have been for going to be 4 years this September. And we get to talk to a lot of real estate investors. You get to talk to them one-on-one. You get to kind of facilitate rooms and that sort of thing. What are some things from an evolutionary standpoint in the marketing and sales world that you've seen happen positive, happen negative, anything that you just point out and say like, yo, when I first started, this is how it was, and now it's this, and what direction all this is going into? Yeah,
I think, I think you take just about any marketing channel, it's had an evolution and stuff. So you look at like where, 4 or 5 years ago, if you were texting and cold calling 4 or 5 years ago, you were killing it, especially texting when that first came out. Like you were crushing and doing whatever. Now with all the regulations, things like that, like that's kind of fallen off a little bit. But people that figured out how to abide by the regulations and still do it consistently are doing very well with it. So that's something that comes back to, we were talking about of just like making changes and adjusting and things like that. Some people gave up on direct or on texting right away because they're like, oh, I don't put my company name on there. Well, your company is probably not reputable. That's why you don't want to put your company name on there. But if it is, you're okay with it. Direct mail, I feel like it's always been kind of up and down and stuff. It's kind of knowing whether it's, hey, what's working? Is it the letter? Is it the postcard? Is it the fake check? And it's going to be, if it's the fake check now, it's going to be the postcard in 6 months from now and whatever it is, and knowing what to put on that postcard, and is it branded or unbranded and things like that too. So I would say if you have the Google reviews, go branded. If you don't have the Google reviews, go non-branded. And that's, kind of look at that way with, with the amount of digital ads coming in too, where the last couple of years, PPL was so super hot, where there's these companies that were running the PPC campaigns to be able to capture those leads, to be able to sell them to you guys or sell them to all the real estate investors. And PPL was so hot and stuff. Now PPL is kind of falling off a little bit,
right?
To where if you kind of hone in your PPC, you could probably beat out the PPL companies and stuff like that too. So, crazy to see there. The difference of television. When television, there used to be no ads for, buy my house, on TV. Now there's, during a commercial break, you might see two of them during the same commercial break in the same market and stuff like that now too. So now it's pairing your TV with the PPC. So they're working together and helping yourself out. So, or the people that are running TV ads, the people that are running PPC against them, because hey, you're running TV, but you're not on a PPC. So I'm going to capture all those leads because people are going to try to look you up and I'm going to get them instead. And it's kind of that competition that comes within it. But, being able to, really what it comes down to is being able to put yourself out there now as a alternate solution to putting your house on the market of, hey, if there's something that putting your house on the market or having a ton of people walk through your house and do showings, if it doesn't fit for you, like there is another option to putting your house on the market and selling retail, where there are people that can help you out, find that solution no matter what it is. And people just come check your house one time and they'll buy it. What they're going to do with it, we don't know. But whether it's wholesaling or fix and flip or novating or installment method or whatever it is, there's a lot of different options out there for people.
Yeah, for sure. No, I appreciate all that insight. And I think you'll probably agree with this too, just the trends too, and what you just said there. Something interesting over the last probably like 7 to 10 episodes that I've recorded with guests on this podcast, the number one thing that it always circles back to, like the root of the marketing that anybody's doing, is all relationship based. It's building relationships with, and it's trying to nurture and build relationships with the leads that are coming in, as opposed to just looking them as a transaction. And it's been done through like TV ads. They're doing it through PPC. They're doing it through referrals. They're doing it through literally everything, from the lead manager to the actual acquisitions and salesperson. It's all the way through, and that's been very interesting to see. So
yeah, I mean it's so important, because that's the thing is like you can throw all kinds of marketing out there, and can you get a deal or two and make some money? Yeah, 100% you can. But when it comes to, if you want to build a business, then there needs to be a relational aspect to it, because you need to be able to produce it. You need to be able to do it over and over again. Okay, if I bought one house from Josh, I want to know, why did Josh sell me his house, and what worked for him? What about me? Did it make sense for him to do that? What was his situation? And then, okay, well, if Josh needs to sell his house and it worked out for him, well, then somebody else did, and somebody else needs that help, and things like that. It has to be relational. And that's what, I mean, any business is like that. So if you want to build a business, you have to make it relational and go past the transactional aspect like you're talking about.
Absolutely. Man, this has been a very good and insightful episode. Extremely happy with the way that we kind of extracted some information from Brian's very intelligent brain. So, Brian, if somebody wanted to get connected with you, maybe learn more about what you have going on, maybe they're in the Indianapolis market, wanted to hang out or something and maybe do some deals together, whatever, what's the best way to learn more about you, what you have going on, and get connected?
Yeah, if you want to learn more about like kind of what we do with the Collective Genius or anything like that, you just go to thecollectivegenius.com and check that out. Or you can hit me up at Brian at the Collective Genius. Happy to connect with you there on social media, Brian Snider, on Instagram as the Indie Snider. So happy to help you out there as well. So love to connect with you and help you out in any way I can.
Absolutely. And guys, everything that Brian mentioned there, we'll have listed down in the show notes below. So make sure you go check that out. Brian, appreciate your time, man. It was great hanging out, and I look forward to having you back again soon.
For sure, man. Always a pleasure, Josh. Thanks.
All right, guys, that's going to do it for today's episode. Thank you so much for joining and listening. Once again, if you haven't already, make sure you do go down and check the show notes for everything that Brian mentioned. Those are all going to be linked below. I am also in Collective Genius, so I can speak volumes for it as well. I have been in there for quite some time. And definitely one of the best groups in the country. If you're a real estate investor, you want to be a part of that. And they have multiple levels with Elevate, Select, and Premier. So whatever level you're at as a real estate investor, there's something there for you. But if you haven't already, make sure you have subscribed to the show, leave a review, and share this around with some friends if you think that you need some help upping their game in the marketing and sales aspects of the real estate business. Other than that, thank you guys for listening, and we'll catch you in the next one. See ya.